Good evening, family. You've tuned in again to another edition of The Journey 2020. We like to say here that the journey is from you to me, from me to you, and for us to reach a higher plane and a higher degree. Tonight, we had expected to have a guest on, but our guest, and I'll let Charles explain a little bit more. But before we do this, I'm always remiss in introducing myself. I'm Dr. John Robertson. I'm a clinical psychologist in private practice here in Orlando, Florida. And our purpose in bringing the Journey 2020 to you is to bring you something that hopefully will be educational, entertaining, and hopefully enlightening at the same time. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to my imperturbable co-host, Mr. Charles Morris.
Wow. Okay. That one, I definitely think I'm going to have to go and pull out the dictionary. Welcome, everybody. Charles Morris, happy to be with you here on a Friday evening. I said a few weeks ago that October is my favorite month, because you can in Florida you can tell that it's the season. Well, for people up north around the country, some say the season doesn't change, but in Florida actually it does. And the days are warm, the nights are cooler, and then you have hockey, football, basketball, and baseball. And then we're getting ready for the holidays because in a couple of weeks Thanksgiving is going to be here.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. So as we, and I say that in reference to how close we are to the holidays and Thanksgiving and then Christmas, and then next thing you know, we're going to be talking Happy New Year.
Right.
And how quickly.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, the older you get, it's so funny about how when you're young, time seems to be slow, and then when you get older, time seems to be
too fast.
Right.
Right.
And the one thing about time, a minute is always a minute, an hour is always an hour, and it never changes. But our perspective does.
Absolutely.
And I just say all of that to say, welcome to Journey 2020. And he was saying that we were to have a guest tonight, and I was actually on her show Monday. She has a show on Monday at 12 o'clock on WOKB, and it's Rosalind Dunlap Gentry.
Okay.
And we talk a lot over at Carter Tabernacle Church, and every time we talk, we seem to have and share the same passion among our youth and some of our current issues and forever lasting issues that we have among life.
Right.
And so I asked her because when we talked on the show Monday, we was talking about the never-ending topic of parenting.
Oh my!
But when I talked to her today, well, actually, she told me that she wanted to talk about suicide among teens.
Okay.
She enlightened me that a young gentleman, someone that her son knows at Jones High School, committed suicide. I think it was Monday. Monday. And there was another girl last week over in Gainesville who was 18 years old, and I think she killed herself as well. And so because I think her son, and I think they know the family a little, not some.
Right.
She wanted to kind of touch on that, and we wanted to briefly talk about, because she wanted to come on next week and talk about that as well, and as well as us talking about our role as parents. And there was a couple of things I wanted to ask you in reference to that topic, just based on you in your field. One, how was it 20 years ago versus now? And one of the things, when I'm working with kids, which is kind of funny for me, and evidently it's real, you hear them talk about so much pressure. Because when I was a kid, pressure to me was trying to make a free throw.
Right. Right, exactly.
You know, in the middle of the game.
Right.
You know, pressure for me was trying to get out of the house on Saturdays.
Right. That's it.
You know,
Or making it home
right.
before your parents realized that you were late.
Exactly. Pressure for me was just trying to make sure the dishes was washed.
Okay.
You know, and the things that I was responsible for, making sure that the yard was raked and that type of thing.
Right.
That's, you know, regular pressure. But I've heard so many kids over the last few years just talk about, I'm just under so much pressure. And I get it, but I don't get it.
Yeah.
I get it from the standpoint that I realize the times that we're living in when it comes to the media and the fast pace that that the kids now have.
Yeah.
And I heard someone made a comment about a couple of years ago of just, and I try to think about it myself. I try to imagine being a teenager now. I think I would hate it. I mean, because I wouldn't know any different, but knowing what I know and how I grew up and seeing how things are now, I just think that we had so much more fun in the sense of the opportunities, and we didn't have the pressure. We were not bombarded with all these games and computers, and it was a simpler life in which hopscotch was a great game to play, along with all the other games that we played that we didn't have to plug, even though we were hoping to get something to plug in.
Exactly.
The majority of our time spent was not things electronically.
Exactly.
Even though we did have them. But we shared more of the communications, more time, more things outdoors. We were doing things that seems to be more fun when I think about what I see kids do now versus what we did back then. And there was nothing more important than your bike and your skates. And I don't know how many times I was a cowboy and I got my hat. I had my cowboy boots, you know, because westerns were big back then.
Exactly.
You know, and even though we were playing with guns, you know, I can't tell you how many things, caps that I went through.
Exactly.
You know, and all those things, and all the things we used to do to drive our parents crazy as well. Because it's just little things that when I think about what we used to do, I can't remember how we used to make this what we call wine. We used to go get these berries, and we would, you know, believe it or not, we would go and find some old wine bottles, because we had plenty of those around in the neighborhood. We would go wash them out. We would go and find these particular kind of berries. You ask me what kind of berries now, I couldn't tell you. But back then I knew the type of berries we had to go pick. And we would squash them. And we would make this little remedy or whatever it was. And we would put it in our washed. Like some old MD 2020 bottle, you know, and put them in there, and we would bury them for like a week. And then when we would come back, we would pretend like we drunk, walking around. You know, we wasn't drunk, but we was pretending around. And we would make these what we call the pop guns. We'd take these reeds and cut them up. Cut them, and they would be about that long. They would make a stem that fits up in it. Then we would go and pick what we call the china berries. You take the china berries, you put the first one in there, and you push it up. And then you take the other one, and pow! And then we sit around and we try to shoot each other in the butt. But we would spend time going trying to find figs. We would go in when the season was right. We would go and pick these dates, and we would also go and steal the pecans off people. Even though we had a pecan tree, was always fun trying to go steal them off somebody else's tree. So because they run you out the yard. Y'all better get out my yard. You know, that was the whole fun.
The fun,
And one of the most fun things for me, as I remember when I became 16 and 17 years old, was sneaking into the Gator Bowl. Whenever Cookman, there was a big game coming to town,
Yes.
we would go just to sneak in.
Right.
Not necessarily watch the game,
Right.
but it was just to sneak in.
Right.
And we always found a way in.
Okay.
And it was just little fun things like that we did that didn't require the things that I guess you see now, and the things that kids are. I couldn't imagine. I was very hesitant to go ask my grandmother when my grandmother when I got to be in 9th and 10th grade, when I was trying to do I need some Converse, when I'm used to wearing the PF Flyers.
Right, there you go. Right.
The Pro Kids, whatever it was. And I'm trying to talk them into paying these $10 for these Chuck Taylors, because everybody had to have the Chuck Taylors.
Chuck Taylors, that's right.
Especially if you played basketball.
Oh yeah.
And I can remember when I got my first pair of Chuck Taylors, thinking like, "Oh, I have a ride."
There you go.
I'm a basketball player now.
Right.
So along with all of that, just looking at the kids now. And I will ask you, even though I know she want to talk about this next week, but from a few years ago to now, in your practice, is that an issue that you have to deal with when it comes to parenting and some of the people that come and see you?
Oh yeah. One thing I want to back up a little bit, but because you mentioned something extremely important, and that is the suicide of this young man at Jones High School. And Jones, as I know, is the traditionally black high school, in our area in Orlando, and this other youngster. It's really funny because I just got a phone call from a colleague of mine, and wanting to know if I was available for a panel that the NAACP here in Orlando wants to put on November 30th as an emergency response to the suicides that have happened. And I had said to the person, I said, well, I'd be glad to participate, but I said, why, would they want to put it on that particular weekend? Because that's the Thanksgiving Day weekend. And so she said to me, she said, well, she initially thought about that, but when she talked to one of the NAACP representatives, that they had said that this is an emergency because of the deaths and how they happened, and so they wanted to have this happen as soon as possible.
Okay.
And when I listened to that, I said, you're right, that it is an emergency. So it is going to be very apropos that our guest is going to talk about suicide among young people, because when you talk about the pressures, and in my generation, and I'm a little bit ahead of you, that it was can you in terms of electronics, can you get that extra hour of watching TV?
Right.
And you always had your folks that watching TV was an extreme privilege.
Right.
And we were even happy when we got that little transparent screen, because everything was black and white TV back in those days.
Right.
That's how old I am. And we just thought we were down and going to heaven when you bought that little transparent screen that had the red, green, and blue on there, and pasted it over the black and white screen.
Right, that's funny.
And we thought that we had color TV.
That is funny.
Exactly.
Right.
But in terms of pressures, I would definitely say that the pressures are significantly higher or more today. The young people today, I think one of the big differences is that they're presented with so much choice that back in my day, and I'm sure yours, as you were saying, we had limited choices. It was, when you think about sneakers, it was either the PF Kids, or if your parents were really economical, they got back in my day what they call skippies.
Right, skippies, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the skippies were the no-name brands,
Right.
okay, that nobody had heard of. And the big to-do was if you came to school in some skippies, okay, that folks would just talk about you.
Right.
But it was just that, either PF Kids, skippies, and when you really were, as you were saying,
pro kids too. Pro kids.
let me see, I don't even know if pro kids were around in my day,
Right.
but
we used to call them woofies and hot boxes. Man, you got on a pair of hot boxes and a pair of woofies.
okay,
Yeah,
that's
okay,
it.
Yeah.
And Chuck Taylors were when, as they say, you had really arrived,
Right.
you know, and there were very few folks that had Chuck Taylors at the time,
Right.
but those are just make one example. Those were the choices, you know, in terms of, and we made things. The biggest thing was to make a little a scooter out of a little 2x4 that we get from somewhere, and we'd nail some roller skates on the bottom, put a little fruit box on front, and then if we really
you were the motor.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
The engine, yeah.
Right, you were the engine, and you get your buddy behind you.
You push.
You know,
push.
that's right. Push. You know, and then you get some folks that would really, you know, want to ride.
Right.
And what they do, they push you extra hard, so you go ahead and go off and crash into something. You know, and they be there running, ready to take over.
Right.
But the choices that the young people have to make today are really multi-leveled and at times multi-problems. The other part of it is that parents today, and this, you know, I'm sure that our guest next week is going to talk about, parents also themselves feel the pressure of providing all of these material electronics to kids. And you asked what I encountered in my practice, and more than one parent I've encountered who's become seriously upset because they didn't have the financial wherewithal to buy their kid that Xbox or the newest video game, you know, coming out, etc. And I've had to say to them that, you know, the youngster may want these kind of things, but they don't need them.
Right.
And so often the parents get so caught up in the wants that they forget about the needs.
Yeah, and my parent never had that issue.
Oh, okay.
Never had that issue.
Right. Okay.
At all.
Right. And so, so the parents are under pressure, and then we talk about pressure, you know, with our youngsters. Often in school, there is, despite what I call the dumbing down, you know, of kids in the curriculum. Often, you know, kids feel that if they're not getting a certain grade, that they're just, you know, not making it.
Right.
And I've got to say, with many of our African American middle class parents who are well-intentioned, often put such an emphasis on their youngster getting a particular grade, usually, you know, A's, etc., that at times don't take a look at that the needs of that youngster. In other words, what I run into sometimes in my practice are young people who have various, at times subtle, and I even hate to call them learning disabilities, but different ways of learning.
Right.
That with the pressure that's put on to learn in a traditional way, at times may fall behind. And in falling behind, may then feel, well, what's the use? I'll never catch up, and then give up. So that's, you know, one set of kids. And by the way, the pressures and the issues you have with our young people are not just one size fit all, but can come in many different shapes, you know, in many different sizes. And that is, you have the other kid who may do well. And I ran into this with a cousin of mine, and this is a few years back, whose youngsters were very bright, doing well in school, and all of a sudden the grades began to go down. And one of them came to my cousin and said, Mama, you know, why are the kids calling us nerds in school?
Well,
Okay.
remember when we was talking about who's black and all that, and then when they get into that conversation about you speaking proper and making good grades, and I was talking about how stupid that is.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
and so these kids were faced with that same kind of a thing. And so they felt that getting lower grades would be acceptable in falling in with the rest of the group.
Right.
You know. And of course, my cousin, who was definitely old school, said, you know, I'm not having it.
Right.
What she did was something a little innovative, and that is that because of the parents that were in her area, she gathered a group of the parents, you know, called them and said, listen, let's, you know, get our kids together and have a group, you know, that where they can study. And so what would happen is that these kids would, after school, they would all, either one of the parents who got off work earlier would all take them in their minivan or whatever, take them over to their house, or some other kids, the auntie or the whoever was retired would get them over to one house. They would all then study over there, and then the family would either feed them, you know, or they'd go out and back, play a little basketball, etc. But they formed a little study group, and so many of those kids then felt that they weren't the abnormal, or they weren't the nerds, etc. And I may have said this on one of our other programs. One of the things that happened is that a few years ago, I was in Washington, D.C., and doing a presentation, and a representative from a pharmaceutical company was invited to also do a presentation there. Well, in talking with the young man, found out that he grew up in the same area where my cousin grew up. Okay. You know, my cousin's kids. Come to find out that this young man, who was then as a pharmaceutical rep, according to what he was telling me, was making somewhere between 80 and 90,000 a year. Right. About 4 years out of college, and it told me he was part of that same group of youngsters that, you know, were being called nerds back in those days. Right. Okay. So I tell that story to say that a lot of the times our kids don't have the kind of peer support. In other words, some of their buddies or you know, their hangout associates are at times themselves not doing well, and for that kid will say, well, instead of studying, why don't you come over to my house and we can watch videos or play video games, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So those are some of the pressures that are being faced. The other thing too is that in our commercials, when you think about the commercials, if you watch early morning TV, and it's going to start segueing over into evening TV very quickly, you're going to see the ads for the new video games, the new Xboxes, or the new game controllers, etc. The new TVs, the new whatever it is, electronic. And so the kids are getting bombarded by those marketing efforts. Right. And as a result, then we'll go to say, well, Mom and Daddy, can I have this? Can I get this, etc. Again, the parent feeling that they need to provide their kid with this game or whatever, then get caught up in it.
And again, my mother never had that issue.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. and will wind up into the whole frenzy
Right.
of what is it, Black Friday? Getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning
Right.
to go, and it's a little warmer down here, but still at 2 o'clock in the morning. What is it?
No, actually,
After Thanksgiving.
but there's actually, I
Okay.
heard on one of the morning shows 2 days ago, there's already some people that's out there at a store right now camping out.
Wow.
Right now.
Wow.
Right now.
And
And they've been out there for a couple of days. That was a few days ago. They're out there right now.
my Lord. and really, when you think about it,
And I don't know what deal or what's in that store
right?
to make me. I don't even try to even figure that out. But yeah, okay.
Exactly. but you see the kind of insanity that people will get into, and and will feel that somehow they're doing something almost heroic in being out there in the cold in their little tent or whatever, waiting for this product to be sold to them.
And now you don't have to really touch on
No,
it.
go ahead.
But from a clinical, and you don't really have to answer it, but from a clinical view, it just blows my mind because I try to understand it. I can kind of get it when you're young, but when you're old, and when I mean old, I'm talking about in your 30s.
Right.
I'm talking
Okay.
about-
Okay.
I meant you should be mature enough to. But when, let's just say, there's a movie coming out, okay? Now, to me, once the movie's out, it's out. It's not like they say, well, this movie is only going to play on this Friday
Right.
at this time. Because once the movie's out, it's out.
Yeah.
Or when something comes out, it's out.
Right.
It's done.
Right.
So the rush for the long lines, the rush to be there and to stay and to be part of that madness, it just blows my mind.
Well, Charles, there are whole,
Now, to say,
companies that,
but what I'm
no,
saying is, I'm trying to figure out what is it that your ego say. Well, I was the first to see this movie. Okay, what does that mean? I was the first to get this iPad. Okay, it's a movie and it's an iPad. So that's what I'm saying. I don't. It's not like, well, I discovered how to help you live. I discovered cancer, or I discovered how to make you live happily and young for 200 years. And, I'd be like, oh, really? I can have it. Really?
Right.
But you the first to get the iPad?
Right.
You the first to see the movie?
right.
But I meant from the clinical standpoint,
Yeah,
where that,
yeah.
that is stimulated enough where you so hyped and you want to be part of that is what I'm talking about. From the clinical, whatever that makeup is, whatever it is that's not going on in their lives, I don't know what that is, but it's mind-boggling to me. And the lines are long.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I don't get it.
Well, you touched on it when you said what is not going on in their lives. Okay. Often, my understanding, of some of that behavior, and when I started saying that there are whole marketing departments that are designed just to figure out how to appeal to people's psyches.
Right.
To get them out there
Right.
2 weeks before the sale, etc. But part of it is, our own societal influence, emphasis on material things, on possessions.
Well, that kind of went back to the conversation I was having last week, and I really don't think I finished it too. Remember, I was telling you about when I did the summit and I did the thing with the kids, and I was talking about I have a designer shirt.
Right.
And they both are the exact same. There's no difference in the shirt. The only difference is the one has the designer logo on it and the other one don't.
Right.
Which one would you buy? One costs $20, one costs $50. And so after I had to explain for about 20 minutes again, because they kept saying, now which shirt? It's the same shirt, people. And they just couldn't separate. Well, it don't have the the emblem on it.
Right.
It's still the same shirt.
Mm-hmm.
It's still the same shirt. It's like it's the same because they were so caught up on the
The logo or whatever.
designer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, it's the same shirt.
Mm.
So again, it's just like you need that emblem to feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, that's mind-boggling. Because I never felt, and I'm gonna, when the designer jeans came out, when I was in college, it hit big, right?
Oh yeah.
So I didn't get that.
Right.
Okay, so what I used to do when I was in college, and I actually still have some of them. I used to, of course, catch them on sale,
Right.
take their design off. And my sister was a seamstress. She used to put my name on the back of my pants. I had them on the back pocket and on the lower pants leg. Because I didn't get why I should have your name on my jeans, especially after I done paid for them.
Right.
Because it's like, no, you don't make me. I make the jeans in the sense that, but like we compliment each other. But I don't get why I need your name on my clothes.
Right.
I didn't get that.
Yeah.
So I used to walk around, everybody, oh, Designer Charles. Be like, well, hey, it's me. Because I didn't get that.
Okay.
Maybe there's something wrong with me. I don't know.
Well, I think that's a superb way of really flipping the script. Because there is so much emphasis on a brand being more valuable than the individual who wears it.
Right.
Remember there was a time. Well, it's actually still going on, where kids were jacking other kids because of either their leather,
the color,
or at one time it was with the puffy jackets or or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, so many kids have lost their lives over jackets and sneakers and jeans and all that stuff.
Yeah,
hats
exactly. And it goes back to our emphasis on the material. Or I was listening to my pastor last night talk about the separation between the secular and the spiritual, and how that in many ways that's an artificial division, and that is often we lose the sense that when we put so much emphasis on things, instead of people, and on spirit, that we often lose the true purpose, of both of our lives and the values that we have. So that when you think about it, we have so many diversions, and again, getting back to kids, and their choices.
Right.
There's so many diversions that these kids have to grab their eye, that they're literally flipping channels from one thing to the other thing to the other thing, and often don't develop the maturity in decision making.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that Rosalind wanted to talk about is when it comes to that, because it's just so much, because now the parents are younger. When we were on the show, we were talking last week. When I was on a show Monday, we were talking about the role of the parent.
Right.
And when I was talking with Aki, we were sitting down. They went through a 10-week program where the young fathers were meeting on Wednesdays. We had some really good discussions, and there was times when I actually thought that I wish that you could have been there, because they were really good.
Well, let me know next time.
We were talking about spanking. That was one of the things, and we had a couple of fathers in there that was 22 and 21, and they were talking about spanking their kids, and Key was giving them a different light on a different perspective, and now, to some degree, you know, a spanking, but he was totally against it. I was like, I don't know where you from, but anyway,
Okay. Right.
but his,
Yeah, that's
I
forgive.
mean, you listen to his, perspective, and he made some very good points, and I think he really helped them to also open their eyes to see some things as well.
Right.
But to hear what was going on and to hear some of the information they was giving about the mothers and the challenges, but you could feel how blessed you were to be in the room with these black young. I wouldn't say young because all of us were not young,
I hear you.
but to be in there, it was a very good presence and a very good spiritual feeling in the room.
Right.
And just to hear what was going on and to hear what to share thoughts back and forth, it was very, very much a blessing. And I say that to talk about just what is happening with the parenting, because there's just so much. And one of the things that we said in that meeting was that we have failed a generation, and we're continuing to fail a generation because it was like we are the fathers.
Yeah.
As the fathers, we should have the say so, and we should demand the command that we should have to make this society a better place, because we're failing, and this generation is coming up. We have failed them tremendously.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to see with the pants hanging down, disrespect, and them not just having the passion and all the little things that make up the big things, and they're just so disrespectful. And that was part of the conversation of we have failed.
Right.
And through all of that is going on, because as we talked and as you talked about everything you just said, it always went back to what Akiva said. Now, do you or do you not have control over your house? Yes or no? Do you not have control over whether or not your child watch TV? How much TV? Do you not have control over whether or not your child have a phone and how much time is spent on the phone, on the internet, on the computer? Do you not have control? Yes or no? And the answer is of course, if you should have control. And if you don't have control, then why don't you have control? Okay. And I shared with them one of the couples up at Carter Tabernacle told me, they said, Charles, and this been going on for about 2 years. Said my children get to watch TV on the weekends, and it's limited.
Right. Okay.
And they get this much time on the internet. Other than that, they're reading to me, or they're doing their homework, or they're doing this and that and this. They're not on that. They're not on the internet doing this. If they're on the internet, then they're studying. If they're doing this, then it's because they're allotted a certain time. So they're saying, this is my house. This is the way we're doing what we're doing.
Right.
This is what my children know. There's no if, there's no ands. This is the way my house is structured.
Right.
This is how I'm raising my children.
Right.
And so I get that.
But see, the thing about it is that as a father, as a man, you can't be a father part-time.
Right.
Okay. And so many of these young men, and again, there are many young black and other minority young men who are doing what they need to do as dads, but too many are being baby daddies.
Right.
And that is thinking that a box of diapers and some formula is about being a daddy. Okay, and so we have got too many daddies who are making babies out here, but then don't want to support them.
Right.
Okay, and so you've got some folks who are crying because, and I'm talking about men who are crying because they've got to pay child support.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as they say, well, how's that old saying go? If you do the crime, got to do the time.
Right.
And so I don't want to talk about making babies as doing a crime and such, but the crime is really not being a father to that young man. So, as you were mentioning, control. Unless you are there and know that child, and know what that child is about, know both, his or her strengths, know his or her real needs, the unique character of that child, and then be able to relate to the mother. And again, you may not be in love, with the mother, but to honor that mother as just that, as someone who has born your child, who now is going to be a mother 24/7 for those 18 years and long after, in most cases.
You don't ever stop being a parent.
There you go. All right? Absolutely.
And so, I'm not a parent, and even I know that.
and so when, young men talk about wanting to be the head of the household, etc., you got to not just walk the walk. I mean, talk the talk, but you got to walk the walk.
Right.
And so that's part of the package. And as I think we were both saying a little earlier, with many young men, they've not been given or not acquitted themselves of the kind of a guidance in being, a father. And so you're right. As my generation, your generation, Charles, we have not asserted ourselves enough to say, you don't become a dad just in making your girlfriend pregnant. You don't become a dad just by dropping by every little once in a while, and maybe even for Thanksgiving, bringing the turkey over.
Well, the thing is that one of the things that I did want to talk about, and maybe we can talk about it another time.
Okay.
But statistically, when it comes to people of color, when I'm talking about it is so funny because it's like, so we're African Americans this year. I don't know what we're gonna be next year.
I hear you.
But I just make reference to us colored folks,
or
us black people.
Right.
That's all I know. I don't know, but
whatever.
But anyway, and I would love to talk more about it with Vince or whoever, and maybe Rosalind as well. But it's just the mindset of, it's almost like we are supposed to have children out of wedlock. It's like the mindset is, if such and such is pregnant, it's not like there's a conversation that you take place, and not that saying that it's too late. The conversation is never like, well, honey, you're starting off behind the 8 ball. And behind the 8 ball doesn't necessarily mean that she doesn't have the job or making good money. Because behind the 8 ball means understanding how it's supposed to be. Because just because you can provide for that child in a material way, but what about the psychological part of it, the mental part of it, of what it was supposed to be when it's a mother and a father? And I think we have become numb to that, and I can kind of go into a situation where I was trying to explain to a friend. It's so hard when you talk to mothers. God, it's so hard to talk when you're trying to talk to mothers because they think you're trying to say that they're bad mothers. And whatever that kicks in, I learned a long time ago, whenever you start talking about them being mothers and that thing click in, man, it just click.
Right.
You're like, no, I'm trying to give you a different perspective. I'm not trying to say you're a bad mother. That's not what I'm trying to say to you. So I was trying to say to a friend of mine that I've been knowing ever since like 10th grade, And now her sons are, well, I think one was at that time was like 22 and the other one was like 18. And we were just talking about how dysfunctional their father is. And he's so dysfunctional, he's an alcoholic. So the things in which the son would go to the father for coming to the mother. And so because they go into the mode of, well, my son is so loving. My son is just so wonderful. But I said, what you don't understand is the words that are not being spoken to you. And I said, sometimes what you don't understand, there's something he doesn't understand, and it might not come out until he's in his 30s or in his 40s. Because if he's seen so much of his father as an alcoholic and all the things that he wasn't to him by nature, which you can't relate to, it is not anybody's fault. I'm having this conversation with you just to make you aware, give you some other choices on some things that you might think about doing for your son. You know, and but when you don't understand the psychological part, because you see, oh well, I see my son and he looks great. That's not what you should be concerned about, because I'm trying to tell you as a male, I'm trying to tell you for the problem he's having. He was having a male problem. Now he got to come to you. You can't relate to the problem whatsoever, but baby, you're gonna be all right. Versus, and I'm trying to tell you, you don't understand the psychological part of that whole thing. He sees you as a loving, kind mother, but the part of the father at this time, his father, he's a son. You can't grasp what that is emotionally, mentally. She has no idea. So you try to talk that and have her understand it, but she's too busy being defensive, because you trying to say there's something wrong with my son? Like, let's just change the conversation. Because you throw it out there. And you try to help in the sense of getting her to understand out of love and compassion. And I'm saying, maybe I don't have the right words, I don't know, because I wasn't trying to be forceful. I was just trying to say, you need to understand, just because he seemed fine, just because your child made good grades, just because your child is sociable, that is not what I'm talking about.
Exactly. And it is difficult, for that mother to see, because what I would say is that many of those mothers fall into, not because they want to, but often because there is a missing male or a dysfunctional male in their life, then feel that they have to get into that black superwoman role.
Well, see, the thing is, in that part I understood, and that's what I was trying. I said, you're doing a great job. But I said, you got to. I'm trying to say, you should think about whether or not there should be some counseling going on to try to help him and even help you, because your husband is drunk at 7 o'clock in the morning. He goes to work drunk. As a matter of fact, both of you guys work in the same place, and you told me there is a pool on the bet on the days he gonna be drunk. You told me this yourself. They got a pool at work going on, when he gonna come, what days he gonna come to work drunk. That's how bad of an alcoholic he is. You know, so it's not in the sense that not talking about him. I'm talking about the situation, and you know that he's an alcoholic, a true alcoholic. Okay, but what about the son? Okay, you may not be able to help him, but just because your son is coming to you and you get to be the mother, which I think you're trying to be the mother until he 80. You know, because you know that mothering thing. But you know, but I'm just trying to say, there's think about it. Think about it.
Well, and you know that that situation is very much, and I see this, you know, in clinical practice often, where the mother is basically with the either absent father or dysfunctional father is put into a position of accepting the abnormal, that dysfunctional, that alcoholic or drug addicted father is instead of seeing that as abnormal, begins to, in order to cope, see that as the norm. Okay? And who will tell you that, yeah, I know he's going to come in drunk, you know, and disorderly, 4 days out of 5, you know, you go into work, and then the other 2 days that he's disappeared somewhere. Okay. You know, so you have somebody who, Charles, in many ways, you're talking from a point of sanity to someone who has to protect their psyche by literally, you know, accepting a really abnormal situation. You know?
And they've been married for like over 20, 25 years. They've been married for a very long time.
Yeah.
And I'll just briefly touch on it. Then I want to show you, like, get back to the teen suicide, but just to try to enlighten her, because after I finished having the conversation with her, she said, you know, I never thought of it about like this, because wherever they work, because in her mind, they're going to get a divorce or he's going to leave. And I said, wait a minute, he's going to leave? I said, wait a minute. I said, you cook for him, right? You wash his clothes,
right?
Okay. You make sure everything is taken care of. I said, he knows you. He trusts you. Okay. You already saying that he get his intimacy somewhere else.
Right. Okay.
Please explain to me why I would go anywhere. Tell me why I would leave this situation. I want you to break it down to me and tell me why I would leave you.
Right.
Then she said, I never thought about that. Because you're having no intimacy with him, and you know that he's having intimacy somewhere else, and you're doing all these other things still as a wife. Wouldn't I be a fool to go somewhere else, especially at this age?
Yeah, exactly.
And she go, oh, I never thought about that. I go like you were somewhere else at the insurance office the other day, and you paid your car insurance, and the lady said, oh, by the way, do you know your husband's car insurance have been paid? And you paid it his. Explain to me why I would go anywhere.
Absolutely.
But anyway.
Well, you know, in a clinical formulation, that's a classic example of codependency.
Right.
Okay. And by that, just to break it down, and that is when, again, the partner in the relationship accept what is normally unacceptable or abnormal as being the norm. And often in those situations, the non dysfunctional partner is as sick as the so-called dysfunctional partner. And so you're talking about the often the blind trying to manage the blind.
Right.
You know. And so with your comment that where she said, I hadn't thought about that, you began to open her eyes to what is a more normal situation. But you know, individuals who have lived in that kind of environment where they've been the carrying the weight of the relationship for all those years, that seems almost normal to them. Okay, and so when you think about that relationship between wife and husband, or if you want to call it boyfriend, girlfriend, etc., then when you have a young person in that situation that sees a dad who is drunk, you know, all the time, what, you know, and this is a question to the family out there, what do you think that young person's going to feel? Right. What do you think that he's going to do? And so often those are, when we talk about pressures, those are some of the pressures additionally that are on our kids. And those are the kind of pressures that can lead young people to get into negative behavior, get into the quick fixes themselves of doing things that they ordinarily might not do, or getting into alcohol or drugs, or again, with some kids, and some kids look at a situation like that and actually blame themselves. And that can be one of the fertile grounds that can, with a little bit more factors put in there, put a kid close to contemplating suicide.
Right. And here's some, I'm able to put the website up right here. You can see her. I know it's hard to read right there,
okay.
but it's real hard. But it says suicides among young people continue to be a serious problem. Each year in the U.S., thousands of teenagers commit suicide, and it's the third leading cause of death for ages 15 to 24, and the sixth leading cause of death between the ages of 5 to 14-year-olds. Teenagers experience strong feelings of stress, confusion, self-doubt, pressure to succeed, financial uncertainties, and other fears while growing up. For some teenagers, divorce, the formation of the new family with step-parents and step-siblings, or moving to a new community can be very upsetting and can intense self-doubt for some teens. Suicide may appear to be a solution to their problems and stress. And that's Facts for Families, American Academy of Child Adolescents Psychiatry.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So with that, you know, it's the sixth leading cause of death.
Death, yeah.
Six. Six.
Oh, I see a nice picture of you on TV.
Oh, the third leading cause.
Third leading, yeah.
Between the ages of 15 and 24.
Exactly.
And the sixth between the ages of between 5 and 14. 5-year-old committing suicide.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I'm trying to find out where my next toy coming from.
Okay.
Hoping for my next toy anyway.
But again, think about what some of our young people today are faced with, and that is with some of the situations that we see of child neglect, child abuse, and children, you know, who are literally unwanted, and with the intensity of the emotions that develop, it's very easy, you know, for a young person to reach that. And often it's not that they want to end their life as such, but they just want the hurting to stop.
Right. You know, I went through that as a teen, and I'll talk about that myself next week. And I was trying to explain some of that at the time. And I'm glad that you said that, because I can relate to that personally from something that I was going through when I was 17 years old.
Okay, yeah.
And so I'll be happy to take you through that whole mindset and the whole scenario of a 17-year-old at the time.
Okay, yeah.
You know? So
yeah,
I definitely can relate to just wanting the hurt to stop.
Yeah.
You know, so
yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
So the next week, when Miss Dunlap Gentry comes, and she's a very passionate person. She was my guest speaker this year at the at my summit. Well, I mean at the karate event, because this year is the first year that I had it separate. So I had the karate, which took place in August. So she came in as the guest speaker to speak to the to my martial artists to the event that day. Right. And so very good, sir. And you're going to be surprised. I'm going to find her bio, but she ran against Jackie Joyner Cursor.
Oh, really?
Not Cursor. What's Jackie Joyner?
Kersey.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
and she tried out for the Olympics. I'm trying to remember. But her story was she used to run against the boys in the neighborhood, and she used to embarrass them. And so she had a world record at one time.
Wow.
You know, in college.
My goodness.
So she was there on a track scholarship.
What was her name again? Or is her name?
Her name is Rosalind Dunlap. She's from Chicago.
Okay.
She's from the Windy City.
Okay.
Yeah. So
okay. I call myself following a track. Especially with the Olympics.
Because you ran track too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to have her send her bio over again, because because I grew up, you know, watching the Olympics, of course. Since you know, and being a big sports fan, I was really in awe of some of the things that she had accomplished, you know, that you just didn't know.
Yeah,
on that level.
Right.
You know, she wasn't just, you know, like like, there's a difference when you say, well, I was all city, I was all state.
Right. Yeah.
But when you got like
But
a
to
world
get to,
record, or when you are
right,
competing
to
on the
Olympic
Olympic level,
level.
it'd be like, oh, wow.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And they say you among the best of the best.
Yeah, you taking it to a whole nother level.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to our guest next week.
Okay.
And it looks like we're running out of time here.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to close it to say that when we talk about our generation, often we don't take seriously what our children think, feel, and experience. And when we take them seriously, and I know that many of our young people can seem like they're act very infantile, I'll put it that way, but we need to pay attention to what they're experiencing, because the attention that you pay to that young person may literally save that young person's life. So again, to sign off, let's keep on journeying from me to you and from you to me so that we can reach a higher level. Good night. We'll see you next week.